Good morning. I am Dr. Scott Gordon, President of Stephen F. Austin State University, and I want to thank you for being here today. I hope this press conference will begin to answer many of the questions that people have about this case. Please understand, however, there will be some areas we will not be able to go into depth on, as this is still an active investigation. Before we begin, however, I want to state that my heart goes out to the innocent young lady, the victim in this case. This case of false reporting. She has our full support, her family has our full support, and we will work closely with them so that she can continue on her pathway to success. This was a terrible, terrible ordeal for her, and those who are involved in this case will be held accountable. This is a very serious issue that involves as many as 10 young ladies and a core group of approximately 6. It's also a very complex dynamic that is being investigated at this time, and we're investigating it from a variety of angles. I have with me today 2 individuals who are involved with investigating this case. SFA Police Chief John Fields and SFA's Director of Students' Rights and Responsibilities, Mr. Dennis Mosley. To explain the facts of the case, we'll first turn to the SFA Police Chief, Chief John Fields, who can talk about the progress on this case and the facts. After Chief Fields, I will turn the mic over to Mr. Dennis Mosley to talk to you about how the student disciplinary process works on campus. And following Mr. Mosley, I'll have a final statement, and then we will conclude the conference. So, Chief Fields.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. Good morning. As Dr. Gordon said, I am Chief John Fields. I am the current Chief of Police at Stephen F. Austin University Police Department, and I'm going to give you a timeline, some information that will clarify some of the things that have been said and some things that we're doing in our investigation. First, I want to acknowledge that we take every incident and every complaint seriously at Stephen F. Austin University. I believe in accountability. I've been in higher education for 14 years, and this is something that I have compassion for. We have provided resources for Ms. Evans. We continue to gather permanent information to the case. The incident has been perceived as racial in motive, but I can assure you that's far from that. I can assure you it's not racial. It's far from that. The investigation evidence has identified the core group that Dr. Gordon mentioned, 3 black females and 3 white Caucasian females. All students appear to be willing associates up until that incident. But what I'm saying is they have been together, they have been associated with each other up until that particular incident. Our cameras, interviews, social media posts that we ascertained from the investigation proves and supports the evidence that we've been gathering. I'm going to give you a timeline. The CA called the University Police Department. So I want to make sure I debunk that theory about the suspects or the students involved called the police department. It was not the students involved. It was actually the CA, which is the community assistant in the residence hall. So it wasn't the students that called the police department and gave the actual false report. The call, the ongoing incident is going on right now, possible threats made to the resident about Scissors killing. That was the gist of the call. The resident has been making threats to other residents about how she's going to shank them with scissors. Now one of the residents having a manic episode. Officers were dispatched based on the threat level, called into University Police Department. Keep in mind that our officers are trained to respond to the incident, and the threat level was that a student was possibly being stabbed, potentially being stabbed, and can be killed. They responded within policy of what they were trained to do. Officers arrived on scene and were directed to room 116. The call was for room 103, which was the student that had the manic attack. The officers were then rerouted to room 116, which Christina Evans is in that room. And two of the young ladies that talked to the CA are also Mrs. Evans' roommates. Officers knocked on the door 4 times. They knocked on Ms. Evans' door 4 times. The suite mate on the other side, they did not go inside Ms. Evans' door, weren't able to get in. They went inside. The suite mate let them in through her door. They came through her bathroom door, and that's how they made the entry. Only one officer had a weapon unholstered, and his weapon was it was night, no lights on in the room, and he had a light on his weapon. At no time was he intentionally trying to point at the subject. The other officer, there were 3 officers, keep in mind, the other officer had his taser ready. The third officer did not unholster taser or weapon. Once they found Ms. Evans in bed, the threat was de-escalated. At no time was there any time that the officer were unprofessional in dealing with Ms. Evans. She was asked to come outside the room, and they had a conversation. And that part will be justified in the body cameras. And speaking of the body cameras, we have asked for the parents to give us permission to release the body camera. Once that's released, then everyone will see exactly what happened. So I want to reiterate, at no time did we go inside the room like the Wild Wild West, like it's been presented in the media and some of the other social media posts. The officers were always professional, and they had a conversation with her. And at that time, we started the process of providing her with the resources she needed from the university. In conclusion, the information was that we have, there's 2 processes in the university judicial process. You have the criminal portion, and you also have the student rights portion. They work simultaneously. Mr. Dennis Moses, our student rights director, that information has been passed on to him, and he will proceed through process, because you got to think about it. You have to give people that are accused due justice. They got to have due justice, and we're doing the case. Same thing with us. We're continuing the case. It's ongoing. We're doing a criminal investigation case. Once we're finished, we're going to present our case to the local DA's office, and then they will determine if there are charges or not. Lastly, the university takes incidents such as this seriously. As they understand the process, we will ensure accountability throughout the campus. So I just want everybody to understand, this is not a racial issue. We hold students accountable. But at the end of the day, students are coming to the university to get an education. Our jobs as administrators for the university is to educate our students and correct the behavior when it needs corrected. And then when it's over with, we want them to graduate. So we're not in the business of trying to rush for judgment. We got a process that's going on. These are college students, and I'm not saying that making an excuse for anything, but we got to make sure, give us time and be patient, let the investigation run through, and I assure you that it will be accountability for those who are responsible. We will continue to provide our students guidance and accountability and support they need to be productive citizens when they leave SFA. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chief Fields. I'd like to now turn the microphone over to Mr. Dennis Mosley, our Director of Student Rights and Responsibilities.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. Good morning. My name is Dennis Mosley. I serve as the Director of Student Rights and Responsibilities. Our goal in the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities is to address behavioral misconduct on the university level. I will ensure you that we take every report we receive in the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities very seriously, and we act accordingly. However, we must provide students with rights to due process. What I want to disclose to you guys today is transparency about our process and how it actually works. However, according to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, I will not disclose any details of the specific case. I will only disclose our process. Firstly, once we receive a report, we reach out to all involved parties that name has been mentioned in a report we received with notice. That notice entails students receiving the charges of the alleged violations that are being brought against them according to the Student Code of Conduct, as well as the contact information to report to the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities to start the student conduct process. Once that student report to the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities to start the process, at that moment, we provide them with what's called a disciplinary hearing information form. That form entails their rights as students, as well as how our process works. During that intake, students are allowed to ask any questions that they may have regarding the process. In addition, students also have the right to have an advisor present. That advisor may serve as a parent, a friend that's not involved in a particular case, or an attorney. If an attorney is going to be present, student must provide us with that notice so that we may reach out to general counsel and have general counsel present during the time of the administrative hearing. Once students have signed off on that disciplinary hearing information form, acknowledging understanding, at that point, we get students scheduled for an administrative hearing, which essentially serves as the investigation process. Once students schedule for an administrative hearing and they report and we start the investigation process, we must meet with all parties involved in the particular case, as well as once we receive additional information of all witnesses, we investigate those students as well. This takes time. However, again, I will ensure you that we take this very seriously and we are moving forward with this particular case. Once students have that administrative hearing and we've met with all students involved in this particular case, at that moment, we then render a finding of responsibility. How we render a finding of responsibility, which entails if a student is responsible or not, is going to be based off the preponderance of evidence standard. What this entails is a burden of proof analysis, which leads somebody, which would be a reasonable person, to conclude that there is a probable cause of something more likely than not to have happened based on the information we've received and additional information after meeting with all involved parties. Once we render a decision of finding of responsibility, which entails, again, if a student is responsible or not, at that moment, we issue sanctions as deemed appropriate. Those sanctions range from warning, conduct probation, disciplinary probation, suspension, or expulsion from the institution. Once that finding of responsibility and sanction is deemed appropriate, it is provided to the student. That concludes the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities process. However, the student have the right to appeal that decision, in which that decision, the appellate shall serve as the dean of students, and the university is going to uphold that decision. That concludes the process regarding investigation for the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, as well as the appeal process for the dean of students, the university to uphold that, and we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I want to again express my outrage that the victim in this case was put into such a horrible position. She and her family, again, have our full support. I trust that our university police with Chief Fields and our Student Right and Responsibilities Office with Mr. Mosley will conduct a thorough and complete investigation, and I really look forward to their results. Over the last 2 days, I've received briefings on the details and facts of this case involving this false reporting incident that occurred on September 14th. As a result of these briefings, I've become very concerned about some process irregularities in this case. Specifically, the amount of time it took for this case to be turned over to Dennis and the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, and the fact that I learned of this case, from the victim's mother many days after the incident. As a result of these concerns, I will be engaging an outside independent investigator to conduct a division-wide review of the university affairs, policies, procedures, practices, and reporting structures. This review will include SFA's operating policies and procedures in regards to housing, student affairs, and student conduct. Upon completion of this report, I will look at all findings and recommendations and make decisions on how we move forward to prevent such delays and irregularities from occurring in the future. The delay in reporting in this case to the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, and the fact that I had to learn of this case from the mother of the victim several days after the event, is unacceptable and will be addressed. This concludes the conference.
I have a question for Chief Fields. Chief Fields, will you answer questions? Dr. Gordon, will you answer questions? Don't you think you owe it to the students, the staff, the alumni to answer questions from the press regarding this incident? Will you come back to the podium, please? Chief Fields, it was a bit unclear. Could you walk us through exactly what happened when your officers arrived at the dorm? What did they encounter when they walked into that room?
When they walked into the room, when they arrived at the dorm, they were dispatched to room 103. When they got to room 103, they were redirected to room 116. So that was the
And
second.
who told them to go to room 116?
The CA and, from my understanding, the CA and the people that were in the hallway,
Who were the people in the hallway? Her roommates?
her roommates.
Okay. The 3 white roommates, is that correct?
No, two white roommates
Okay.
and one African-American female,
Not a roommate?
not a roommate,
Okay. What
cheermate.
did they tell you had happened?
What did they tell
What was
me or
going
told the
on?
investigator? What did they tell the investigators?
Yes.
They told the investigator that, what I said earlier, that there was a possible scissors threatened incident that one of the students possibly will, or is going to be killed.
So
That's,
when you got there to the room, did your officers see anyone who was injured or harmed?
when they got to the room, no, the room was dark, and when they found out,
When they got to the 2 roommates, the 3 people in total, were any of them harmed or injured?
no. They were told that this was not the room that the incident was involved, and they redirected to another room, where the supposedly incident took place, was taking place.
You said your officers knocked 4 times
Yes,
and they got no answer,
no answer.
and then they were led into the room by a suite mate?
Yes,
And what did they see when they walked into the room?
the room was dark, and they had flashlights. And once they realized that Mrs. Evans was in bed and the lights were turned on, they de-escalated the situation, asked her to come out in the hallway, and they consulted with her and asked her about what was going on also. That's when the investigation started with them.
And you said Miss Evans was in bed.
Yes.
Was she clearly asleep?
Yes. And that comes from the investigation. That's what we found out. And keep in mind, when the officer responded, they responded on what they knew. We didn't know what was going on until the investigation took place, so that's why we're finding out all the details now. But when they responded on what they were dispatched to, possible stabbing or killing with scissors. So that's, in their mind, that's what they were responding to.
But they didn't hear any sounds of anyone being injured,
No, but you got to trust and verify.
so they got there and they didn't hear anything?
No,
Okay. No one was being stabbed.
didn't know that until they got into the room. Can't assume, you got to trust and verify.
So one officer had a weapon unholstered, you said?
Yes,
Okay, walking into a dark room
with lights.
with a flashlight.
Yes.
In that situation, what is the protocol with the officer with the gun? Is he to put it up as soon as the lights come on and he sees there's nothing going
He's
on?
put up when it's identified that threat is over, there's no threat. And keep in mind, because they are seasoned officers, when we look at, we can speculate what could have happened, but we need to look at what didn't happen because of the training that they do have and the training that we do monthly dealing with use of force. So that's a two-sided coin. When you go into a situation, you're looking for the same thing as an active shooter. You go into the scene to find the threat, and once the threat is over, then you de-escalate, and that's what happened. And that comes with good training.
Did you talk to that officer that had the gun out to ask him when it was put away?
Yes, we talked to him. Plus, we verified through the body cam. But once the parents give the information about the body cams that we can release, then you all will see that for yourselves. And all the questions about how they enter the room will be explained on the body cams.
So was the CA who had called the police after hearing this from the students about the scissors? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So students reported to the CA, and then the CA reported to the police what she had heard from, or they had heard from the students.
Yes, after she called her hall director, and her hall director instructed her to call the police.
What exactly did the CA tell police that the students said they saw?
Tell the police?
Yes, when they called you.
The
CA.
dispatch, she basically told them what the students told her. They told her that Mrs. Evans had some scissors and she was going to stab another student.
Is it the CA's responsibility, I guess, to kind of verify that before they make the call, I guess? Or I don't know what policies are in regards to CAs within the university, but
That's
it seems like a crazy claim before you call police about that, right?
That's something that we're looking into, and like Dr. Gordon said, looking at policies and making sure that they're updated and making sure that training. And the thing about it is you have to have training, and whenever you have a situation like this, you always go back and do an after-action plan, and you look at what was done right and what needs to be improved, and that's one of the things that we are looking into.
Are the 6 other girls also on the cheer team?
Only one.
Okay.
Chief, in your video statement you released on Monday, you made a point to say a racially diverse group.
Yes.
And again, just this morning, you're saying racially diverse and that it was not racially motivated. So 2 questions. What is the breakdown of the number of girls racially? And if you're saying it wasn't racially motivated, what was the motivation?
That's what we're trying to find out, but if you look at the breakdown, and here's some other stuff that you don't know, there's a lot of interaction in those couple rooms. We have probably more. We have some African-American men. We have a lot of black
Let's
females.
talk about the people who you say were involved in setting up this incident. You said it was 10. Is that the number you're going with right now?
11. You
11?
have
All women?
four black females,
Okay.
1 Hispanic, and the rest Caucasian. All of these young ladies have been associated in those past couple of days by the video footage that we seen on the cameras. They were associated up until that incident. Even that day, they were having interaction. So with the interaction, the evidence doesn't lead to any racism. It's more students doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, and it's just not a factor. It's just not there.
Other students of color but the majority of the students involved were white. You're saying that doesn't make it a racially motivated incident?
It's not a racially motivated incident because some black females were involved. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So it's not a race issue. We can sit here and we can debate it, we can look at the things, but the bottom line, the evidence supports that it wasn't a racial issue.
You mentioned something about a manic episode.
Yes,
Did you find anyone having a manic episode?
we did, but I can't give out that information.
Was it the student at the center in
We
this
need to
case who you're
conclude
saying is
this.
innocent?
We need to conclude this, we're getting into the details of the investigation.
Okay,
from Dr.
and that's all I can
Well,
give
you
you.
raised this detail, so I think we need to clarify it,
I
especially
think we need
for
to
the
conclude the
parents.
information. Here's a printed copy of the statement that Dr. Gordon gave. We appreciate you being here today.